Okay, I'm going to get started by just welcoming all of you guys. Welcome to Wat Tung. Nice to see everyone this morning. Welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Today is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, where I'll explain to you guys what that is a little bit later. We start each one of our classes with meditation, so I'll invite you guys to join for a meditation session, and then afterwards I'll explain to you guys what the Pali Canon and English study group is. The Buddha figured out how to get to enlightenment, where the mind's completely peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. And this is accomplished through training the mind. You can get to a point where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. And you can accomplish this through multiple aspects of the teachings of the Buddha, learning, growing, and developing on the path to enlightenment. And meditation is an important part of that. So we start each one of our classes with meditation, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way to enlightenment. So there's more that you would need to learn besides just meditation in order to be able to train your mind. One of the biggest myths about the life story of the Buddha is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. And this actually isn't true. There was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. So if you'd like to join for meditation, I'll guide you in a meditation session. And then afterwards, I'll help you to learn some of the teachings of the Buddha so that you can understand more about the path to enlightenment. The way that I start with meditation is I start with some chanting to ease us into the meditation. And if you guys would like to join in the chanting, you're more than welcome to. I see many of you guys have the chanting sheets in front of you. Somebody put some chanting sheets here in the middle of the floor, and there's some over there on the cabinet as well. These chants are something that we do in order to ease the mind into meditation and actually get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So if you decide to chant along, you'll see that it'll actually help with your meditation practice. During the lifetime of the Buddha, they used chanting as a way to help commit the teachings to memory. Every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would recite his teachings orally, because they didn't have books and audiobooks and videos and podcasts and things like this that we have today in order to help them to remember the teachings. So they used chanting. Every 2 weeks, they would just recite his teachings orally, and this is how they committed them to memory. So you can see from the origins of chanting that this isn't any kind of rite, ritual, ceremony, worship, or prayer, or anything like that. There's none of those kinds of things in the teachings of the Buddha. The Buddha didn't teach a bunch of beliefs, and that if you believe a bunch of things, then something good was going to happen when you die. Instead, he's teaching you how to learn, grow, and develop now in this life in order to be able to experience a wonderful life now in this life, so that you can experience this peace and joy that is the enlightened mental state. So you won't see any rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, or prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. If you see people doing those things and associating it with Buddhism, they've misunderstood what the Buddha taught, that you won't find any of these things in his original teachings. So I use these chants as a way to ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. If you look at the English translations, you're going to see a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for the Buddha. And because of that, I don't think the Buddha even created these chants himself. They were probably created by his students, either during his life or after his death, because a Buddha wouldn't go around and say, here, chant these chants to me out of respect for me, right? This would be the ego or arrogance and putting yourself above other people. And an individual who's gotten to enlightenment, they don't do that. They don't see themselves as being above people, and they don't see themselves as being below people. They just see themselves as being equal to everybody. So I'm sure the Buddha wouldn't have created these chants, but if you learn from a teacher how to move from anger and sadness and frustration and all these other feelings to this peaceful and joyful mental state, which is a permanent mental state, and this teacher didn't want anything from you or expect anything from you, you'd probably have a lot of appreciation, gratitude, and respect for that person too. So that's where I think these chants actually came from. So after the chanting, then we're going to go down into the meditation, where I'm going to be guiding you in meditation. I'm going to be essentially teaching you and instructing you how to meditate while we're actually meditating together. But then there's going to be a period of time where it's just quiet and we're just all meditating. Everyone here at the temple and anyone joining us online, we'll just all be meditating together at the same time. Now, during that time of quietness, I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. You might hear a car go by, a dog barking, a bird chirping. Sounds like we got some work going on outside today. It sounds like a saw or something. You're going to hear occasional sounds. Someone might even sneeze, or they might cough or something like that. if your mind craves permanent silence and you're in meditation craving permanent silence, when you hear a sound, you will cause your mind to be annoyed or frustrated or agitated. It's not the outside world that's causing your mind to experience these discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. It's the mind itself, that the mind is craving permanence, wanting things to be a certain way permanently. And when the mind gets what it wants, it gets pleasant feelings like happiness or excitement in others. But when the mind isn't getting what it wants, it gets things like anger, sadness, frustration in others. In the unenlightened state, the mind will firmly believe that it's other people who are causing you to be angry and frustrated. But you can see through the teachings of the Buddha in a way that you can independently verify that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. And it's because the mind's craving permanence, but yet it lives in an impermanent world. Things around you are constantly changing. So you're not going to be able to be in a situation where you're meditating and it's permanently quiet because you live in an impermanent world. So you're going to hear occasional sounds, and you can just reside peaceful and joyful as that's going on because you understand the world's functioning exactly the way it's intended to function, with this impermanence where things are constantly changing in the world around you. So there'll be this period of time of quietness.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Did you repeat that?
I'll repeat it later. I don't know how to turn this off. Did you get that? Could you try again? I'm not sure how to turn that off. Okay. Anyway, so in this meditation, you're going to have occasional sounds that are happening, right? So as long as your mind's not craving permanence, you'll be able to be completely peaceful and joyful because things are impermanent, right? Impermanent things happen from time to time, and you can just reside peaceful and joyful, understanding this impermanence is normal. So there'll be this period of time of quietness, but I'm sure you're going to hear occasional sounds. Then we're going to come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start today's class, helping you to understand what the Pali Canon and English study group is. And that's where we'll then kind of move forward with helping you to learn some of the teachings of the Buddha. In terms of your body position for meditation, there's 4 positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And you would learn these different positions at different times because it's kind of like a tool belt that you're going to need these different tools at different times in your journey to enlightenment. But oftentimes people are learning in the seated position. So I'll give you guys a little bit of guidance on the seated position to help you guys find something that's comfortable for you. And then there's these other positions that you can learn at other times in your journey to enlightenment. It's important to understand that there isn't just one fixed way to sit in meditation. That would be permanence. But we live in an impermanent world. Everybody's body's different. Everybody's going to find something that's comfortable, that's different from person to person. So what I'm going to share with you are just suggestions, things for you to consider. It's not that you have to sit in this way. These are just options for you to consider. You can sit however you're comfortable, whether it's something that I'm teaching you or it's something else that you find on your own, because you're not training the body, you're training the mind with the teachings of the Buddha. So some things for you to consider is that you could sit on the floor, in a chair. Maybe if you're at home, you're on a bench or a sofa or in a wheelchair, you can really sit however you like. If you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. This is going to kind of soften your seat a bit. And if you're choosing to bring your legs together in the cross leg position, you might just do that lightly. Whereas if they're real tight, it can impede the circulation. It can cause pain in the lower body. Some people like to put their legs off the mat. This gets their hips up in the air, and it lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles, allowing the circulation to flow. The Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. If that's comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, it's not about everyone doing it the same way, because that would be permanence, and we live in an impermanent world. So some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people put their palms up, or you might even just rest your hands comfortably in your lap. If you're sitting in a chair, on a bench, or a sofa, or wheelchair, you can also sit however you're comfortable. Some people like to sit with their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles, but you can see me sitting here in a chair with my legs crossed, so this is an option for you as well. And then you can put your hands and arms wherever you like. In terms of your upper body, it's helpful if this is erect with your sternum up and your shoulders back. It'll help keep your mind attentive and alert during the meditation, because this is a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from your mind and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in your mind. So if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be dull or lethargic. But if you were real rigid, the mind could be overactive or uptight. So you'd like the upper body to be in the middle with the sternum up and the shoulders back, because it'll help you to train your mind, keeping it attentive and alert during the meditation. It also makes it easy for you to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. So again, I'm going to do some chanting to ease us into meditation. You guys are welcome to join. You'll find that it helps you to get more benefit out of your meditation. Then I'm going to come back in with some guidance afterwards. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Sawakato Mahakavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokawitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing And that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโอตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมอะระหะสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone here this morning. Welcome to everyone online as well. This meditation that we just did is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is one of the primary forms of training that the Buddha used in order to train his mind to get to enlightenment. There's other meditations that you would need, and there's other teachings that you would need in order to make your way to enlightenment. But this is one of the primary things that you would need to learn and understand and practice on a regular basis in order to be able to get to enlightenment. It addresses the primary cause of what's causing your mind to be discontent. The mind is experiencing things like anger, sadness, frustration, and others because it's having craving, desire, attachment. The whole goal in the path to enlightenment, getting to this enlightened mental state, is to eliminate your discontent feelings, where you no longer experience any anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these types of feelings and others can be completely eliminated from the mind. Oftentimes the mind thinks that it's the outside world that's causing these feelings. You might think that it's your mom or dad that are frustrating you, or your brothers or sisters are annoying you, or maybe your boss is irritating you or something like this. This isn't actually true. It's actually coming from one's own mind. This is the reason why you can actually eliminate your discontent feelings, because it's the mind itself that's causing these feelings. If it was other people who were causing these feelings, you would never actually be able to eliminate them. So the teachings of the Buddha are designed for you to learn them, examine them, and investigate them. You reflect on them to independently verify whether they're true or false, and then you practice his teachings, integrating them into your day-to-day life in order to train your mind and uproot the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings. So the mind's craving, desire, attachment, its longing, its yearning, wanting things to be a certain way, this is what's causing the discontent feelings. If the mind gets what it wants, it experiences pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it experiences painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. You can see this for yourself. You need to be able to see it for yourself. You can't believe me. You can't believe the books. You can't believe what anybody says about these teachings. You need to be able to cultivate the wisdom to see the truth for yourself. So what I encourage you to do is take some examples from your own life to be able to see this to be true for yourself. Look at a recent situation where you've been angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. You should be able to look at that and see that your mind was longing, yearning, and craving something, wanting something to be permanent. And if you would have got what you wanted in that situation, you would have been happy or excited. But because you didn't get what you wanted, the mind was angry, sad, irritated, frustrated, or some other discontent feeling. I'll give you a couple of examples just to help you see this, because this is going to help you to understand why we're meditating the way that we are. If you think back to when we were children, we really wanted chocolate and ice cream. And we would go to our parents oftentimes and say, Mommy and Daddy, can you get me chocolate and ice cream? And sometimes they would say, sure, here you go. Here's your chocolate and ice cream. And we were so happy and excited about that. And then the next day we might have came around and we said, Mommy and Daddy, can I have some chocolate and ice cream? And they're like, sure, here you go. You can have your chocolate and ice cream. Oh, we were so happy eating that chocolate and ice cream. They were the best parents ever. But then one day we said, hey, Mom and Dad, can we have chocolate and ice cream? And they said, no, you can't have chocolate and ice cream. We were angry because we weren't getting what we wanted. And we thought Mommy and Daddy were the cause of that anger and frustration. But it was our own mind longing, yearning, and craving for this chocolate and ice cream to be permanent. If we could get chocolate and ice cream every single day, man, that would be wonderful. And if we could get it 2 or 3 times a day, oh, that was the best day ever. But the thing is that this chocolate and ice cream is not permanent. So as long as your mind is longing, yearning for that, you can only be happy when you get it. And when you're not getting it, you're going to get angry, sad, or frustrated. It's your mind itself that's causing these feelings. You can see this in a relationship. If you've been with a boyfriend or girlfriend, when you guys first got together, you might have been so happy or excited about that. But then when you guys broke up, you were angry or sad or lonely or bored or missing this person. This is because the mind's holding on and craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life, when in reality, you live in an impermanent world. Everything around you is constantly changing, but the unenlightened mind lacks the wisdom of that, and it craves for things to be permanent. So what this meditation is doing is it's training your mind to let go. Because the mind's holding on and craving for things to be permanent. And it's only when your mind lets go that you can be peaceful and joyful. And you can see this also with that relationship when you guys broke up. Because when you guys first broke up, you were angry or sad or frustrated or lonely or bored. But at some point, your mind let go. And that's where you regained your joy and your peace. Where you were like, you know what? If he wants to be with someone else, so be it. And your mind let go. Or if she wants to move to another part of the world, so be it. And your mind let go. And when your mind let go, that's where your peace and your joy came in. The same thing happened with chocolate and ice cream. At some point, your mind let go. And you were like, you know what? If I have chocolate and ice cream, that's great. And if I don't have it, that's fine too. You can maintain your happiness and your contentedness either way, whether you have chocolate and ice cream or not. But that wasn't the case when we were first growing up. Our mind had a craving, a desire. We were longing, yearning, and wanting this thing to be permanent. You can see this with people who have maybe died in your life, like grandma and grandpa, or mom or dad, or brothers and sisters. As long as they're alive, your mind's getting what it wants. So you're happy about that. But then when they die, the mind's experiencing this impermanence, realizing that they're not permanent in your life. And that's where the mind will have grief and sorrow and displeasure. It's not your love that's causing that. It's the mind holding on and craving permanence. So this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes that's what people think, because you're focused on the breath, and whenever the mind moves off the breath, you're cutting that off and letting it go and coming back to the breath. What's causing these discontent feelings is the mind is holding on. So what this meditation is doing is helping you to have mindfulness or awareness of mind. So you're aware when the mind moves off the breath. That's your mindfulness. And when you cut it off and let it go and come back to the breath, that's training your mind to let go. So if 10, 15, 20, 30 different times during this meditation, meditation, your mind had to let go, this is really helpful for your mind, because now in day-to-day life, when you're noticing the anger arising, you can cut it off and let it go. Or if you're noticing the frustration or the guilt or the shame or the fears or any of these kinds of things, you can let go. And ultimately, if you train your mind enough through the entire path to enlightenment, not just meditation, but there's an entire path that the Buddha taught, that if you learn these teachings inside and out and you train your mind deeply with these teachings, the anger will never arise. The frustration will never arise. The guilt and the shame and the fear and all these other discontent feelings will never arise, because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. So the teachings of the Buddha, as I mentioned, it's not here to believe a bunch of things and hope something good happens when you die. It's also not about rites, rituals, ceremonies, worship, and prayer. It's about training your mind now in your day-to-day life to be able to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state where your mind can be completely peaceful and joyful at all times, where it can be bright and cheerful and uplifted. You can have focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory. Because when the mind is polluted with these causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings, you'll lack concentration, you'll lack focus, you'll lack memory with the mind. You'll get to a point where the mind's enlightened, that your personal and professional relationships are really blossoming. They're at ease. You have harmonious relationships. Right now, you probably have a certain amount of bitterness and harshness and hostility that you put out in some of your relationships, and you'll see that that's all coming back to you. That in those relationships where you're being bitter and harsh and hostile, you might feel justified in that conduct, but it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. It's not the other person. And now when you're putting out that bitterness and harshness and hostility, it's coming back to you in those relationships. So by the time you convert your mind and you transform your mind where it's no longer being bitter and harsh and hostile, you won't be putting that out in your relationships, and you'll see that it won't be coming back to you. You can get to a point where all your relationships are harmonious. You can even get to the point where your mind doesn't even experience a bad mood any longer. It's physically impossible for your mind to experience this. And this comes through training of the mind. So we have various programs here that I help students to be able to learn how to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. And everything's available for you at no cost, whether you're here at the temple or you like to join online through our live stream as you travel around the world. You can get access to these teachings through our books, our audiobooks, videos, podcasts, our live classes. You can even get personal guidance at no cost. Everything's available for you. All you need to do is put in the effort and energy to be able to learn and grow and develop. So on Sundays and Wednesdays, we have something called the Group Learning Program, where I use this first book of our book series. It's titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is the first book that I recommend people start with, where you can gradually learn the path to enlightenment. And each Sunday, I go chapter by chapter, helping students to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. It's a 7-month program. And tomorrow, we're going to be in chapter 15, which is titled True Love, Love Without Attachment. In the unenlightened state, people misunderstand what is love. And as long as you don't understand what love is and you're not practicing true love, you'll have difficulties in your relationships. You'll have broken relationship after broken relationship. And when people are practicing true love with you, you won't be able to identify it. So if you're noticing you're having challenges in your relationships, that would be a perfect class for you tomorrow. We're in chapter 15, where you can learn what is true love and how to practice it. So this is going to help you to be able to improve your relationships. So each Sunday, I go chapter by chapter in that book, helping students to be able to learn at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. Thai time right here at the temple. So you're welcome to come here and join at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m., or you can join online, or you can watch the recordings to be able to learn this path. And you can get this book by downloading it from our website for free. You can take it and go print it if you like on your own. You can get printed versions here by reimbursing us for the printing cost, or you can order it on Amazon if your country has access to Amazon. And then slowly but surely, you can learn how to move the mind towards this enlightened mental state. And after you've learned through that first volume, then there's certain courses and retreats and things like this that you can take that are here at the temple, and they're online. And then I travel in other parts of the world to be able to share these teachings as well. And then as students build a really nice, strong foundation or a nice framework of the teachings, there's this program called the Pali Canon and English Study Group, where each Saturday we get together and we explore all the other volumes 2 through 13 of the book series. This is about a 1.5 year program where you kind of fill in the framework, and you get more details about how to actually move the mind to this enlightened mental state. So in all the foundational programs, it's helping you to be able to develop a foundation, but this program kind of fills in and gives you a lot more content. And in all those other programs, I teach in a more traditional style of learning where I'll teach for 15, 20, 30 minutes. I open up for questions. I teach another 15, 20, 30 minutes, open up for questions and things like that. Where this program, the Pali Canon English Study Group, I teach it more as a study group. And you'll see what that is here in a moment. What the Pali Canon is it's the original teachings of the Buddha. There's 45 volumes of books that are this thick that are the original words of the Buddha. This is the largest, most complete collection that we have of the teachings of the Buddha. This book series that I share, we've extracted out of that 45 volumes a more manageable amount of content that are the key teachings that you need in order to be able to move your mind to enlightenment. And all the teachings, all the courses and classes and retreats that I share, it's all based on the original words of the Buddha, because that's what you really need in order to be able to get to enlightenment. You'd be surprised that the vast majority of the world doesn't study the original words of the Buddha. They don't even necessarily know where to access the original words of the Buddha. But here what we do is we study based on the original words of the Buddha, and I share teachings based on those original words. And that's what's going to help you to be able to see what did he teach and what he didn't teach. So that way you can be fully informed, but then you don't believe those teachings. You learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life to be able to train your mind to get to enlightenment. So while all those other programs, I do the teaching as a traditional style of learning, in this program, we do a study group where what I do is I invite students here or online in Zoom to be able to read one of these chapters from the book. So you can see these chapters are actually quite short. This one here, I think, is just about 3 sentences, where after a student reads the chapter, then I will share some teachings on that, and then I'm going to open up to whatever questions you guys have related to that particular chapter. What we have in each one of these is we have the words of the Buddha, we have a reference that takes us back to the original Pali Canon, so you can see where this came from, what the extract was, and then you've got words from me that are helping you to be able to understand this. Here it's just very short because it's a short chapter, but some of these chapters, they're a lot longer, and you'll see a lot more words from me. The Buddha teaches very clear and very concise, very precise. You don't need to interpret his words or figure them out, but it's helpful to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher to guide you through understanding so that then you can understand, because sometimes a certain teaching is connected to one teaching or another, and if you haven't studied the totality of the teachings of the Buddha, you wouldn't know that. So when you come across one particular teaching like this, it's helpful to have a dedicated practitioner and teacher to help you understand how it's connected to other teachings. In fact, you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment by yourself. You're going to need teachers and guides to be able to help you. So if you would like to volunteer to read this chapter here at the temple, we have microphones in the white bowl here in the middle of the room. All you need to do is get a microphone, take it back to your seat. You can press the gray button. You're going to see lights come on. And then if you hold it up to your chin and you speak in the microphone, we'll be able to hear you here at the temple, and they'll be able to hear you online as well. If you speak here without a microphone, we wouldn't be able to hear you online, and those people would like to participate in the class as well. And then if you would like to keep the microphone with you, you're more than welcome, because someone around you might have a question, or you might have a question and you can just share the microphone with them or use it yourself. And then you can turn it off when you're not using it. That'll help us, because then we won't get feedback through the speakers. And then if there's anyone online in Facebook or YouTube or Zoom, if you would like to ask questions, you can put that into the comment section and we'll be able to see that and answer your question for you. And then if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and ask any questions that way, or even volunteer to read. So I'll show you guys how this works. Is there someone who would like to read this first chapter here? Looks like Rachel's going to do it. Sometimes the unenlightened mind is shy, right? Doesn't want to be in front of people, right? One of the ways to fix that is put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, and then you can overcome that shyness. Mm-hmm.
The noble disciples will not transgress the training guidelines even for life's sake. Just as, student, the great ocean is stable and does not overflow its boundaries, so too, when I have prescribed a training guideline for the disciples, They will not do wrong even for life's sake. This is the second astounding and amazing quality that the monks see in these teachings and discipline, because of which they are pleased in it. Here quoted only one of 8 astounding and amazing qualities that the monks see in these teachings and discipline.
Okay, thank you, Rachel. So here we're in volume 12 of the book series, chapter 24. That's what we're studying here. So students would have already developed a lot of background and experience. By the time someone gets here learning with me, normally they're 1.5, 2 years, even 3 years into their journey on the path to enlightenment by the time they get here to this point. So I know many of you guys, this is your first time coming to learn. And as I mentioned, this isn't where someone would typically start, but it's okay that you're here. You'll learn plenty today, but just understand this isn't where someone will typically start. So what the Buddha is teaching you here is that once you've learned his teachings and you've practiced them closely, that you wouldn't not practice his teachings, even for life's sake, even if your life depended on it. You wouldn't stop practicing his teachings. This is how deeply you'll be able to see that his teachings are true, that it actually is working. Because right now, you know, in situations where you get angry and sad and frustrated and feel guilt and shame and fear and all these other discontent feelings, and as you're learning and growing and developing on this path, training your mind in his teachings, and you'll see that your mind isn't experiencing those feelings anymore in those same situations, you'll know that it's these teachings that are leading to that improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. And having deeply studied his teachings and seen your mind move to this more peaceful and joyful mental state and eventually enlightened, where it's completely peaceful and joyful, there's no situation where you would not practice the teachings. So for example, if someone had a gun to my head right now and asked me to steal something from you, I would never steal something from you, because I know the teachings so well that I understand that stealing is going to produce harm, and I'm not interested in harming other beings, because as soon as I cause harm, that harm is going to come back to me, right? So when you get to the point where you understand the teachings and you've seen them, to get to the point where your mind's completely peaceful and joyful, you're no longer experiencing any of these discontent feelings, you wouldn't stop practicing these teachings even if your life depended on it. But of course, when you first get started, you don't have that confidence in the teachings. You're going to have doubt in the teachings of the Buddha. Every practitioner that comes to the path, they're going to have a certain amount of doubt about these teachings. You might doubt whether the Buddha even lived or not. You might doubt whether his teachings can lead to enlightenment. You might even doubt whether enlightenment is even a true or real thing that is even accomplishable. You might doubt the group of people that you're in this community with. You might doubt me, whether I'm even able to guide you to enlightenment, or you might doubt your own ability to get to enlightenment. This is very common when someone's coming to the path. But the way you overcome this doubt and you get to the point where you wouldn't not practice the teachings even if your life depended on it is through learning, examining, and investigating his teachings, through reflecting on them to independently verify whether they're true or false, and then through practicing them. As you practice his teachings and you're uprooting the pollutions of the mind and you're seeing your mind becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, you'll get to the point where you have no doubt that these teachings are indeed working to improve the condition of your mind. But it takes an individual time to be able to gradually learn and grow and develop on the path to get to that point. So the Buddha is just making that very clear here, that by the time somebody gets to that point where they don't have any doubt and they're practicing the teachings closely, even if their life depended on it, they wouldn't actually not practice the teachings. And it's not because they're following some rule or commandment. That's not the way the Buddha's teachings work. It's just that by the time you've trained your mind and you've seen the results, there's just no situation where you wouldn't practice the teachings. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular chapter. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or here at the temple, you guys can use the microphones to ask questions. Does anybody have questions on this? Let me see if we have anything online here. Oops. Okay, I don't see any questions online. All right, so let's go to the next one. I'm actually skipping over a bunch of chapters here because I know that in this particular class, there's usually a lot of people who are brand new. When I teach this at 9 o'clock tonight, it's where a lot of students that have been studying with me for a while will usually join. So we go through a lot of the different chapters here. But what I'm doing is I'm just going to skip over some chapters because I know that certain chapters would be more helpful for you than others. So this chapter 25 we're skipping over, but I think this next next one, chapter 26, would be a helpful one for us to study here. Would somebody like to read this one? Yeah, Terrence, go ahead.
Unwholesome habits. What are unwholesome habits? They are unwholesome bodily actions, unwholesome verbal actions, and evil, unwholesome livelihood. These are called unwholesome habits. And what do these unwholesome habits originate from? Their origin is stated. They should be said to originate from the mind. What mind? Though mind is multiple, varied, and of different aspects, there is mind affected by craving, greed, by anger and hatred, and by ignorance, delusion, unknowing of true reality. Unwholesome habits originate from this. And where do these unwholesome habits cause without remainder? Their elimination is stated. Here a monk abandons bodily misconduct and develops wholesome bodily conduct. He abandons verbal misconduct and develops wholesome verbal conduct. He abandons mental misconduct and develops wholesome mental conduct. He abandons wrong livelihood and gains a living by right livelihood. It is here that unwholesome habits cease without remainder. And how practicing does he practice the way to the elimination of unwholesome habits? Here a monk awakens enthusiasm for the non-arising of unarisen evil, unwholesome states, and he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts his mind, and strives. He awakens enthusiasm for the abandoning of arisen evil, unwholesome states. He awakens enthusiasm for the arising of unarisen wholesome states. He awakens enthusiasm for the continuation, non-disappearance, strengthening, increase, and fulfillment by development of arisen wholesome states, and he makes effort, arouses energy, exerts his mind, and strives. One so practicing practices the way to the elimination of unwholesome habits.
Okay, thank you, sir. So everything the Buddha taught is all about training the mind. But in order to train the mind, you need the wisdom of how to train the mind. As we were growing up as children, we didn't have wisdom of how to clean our body. So we needed to learn that from our parents. And we learned how to clean the body. And initially, when we were first learning, we didn't really like it, right? We wanted to play because we were holding on to that playtime and all that, those fun activities that we were doing. We weren't interested in taking a shower or bathing. But it wasn't until we were maybe 10, 12, 14 years old that we started seeing the value in showering. And we were like, oh, wow, I kind of like feeling fresh and kind of like going outside feeling all nice and fresh. So we gained wisdom early in our life about how to clean the body, but we didn't really do it because we were complacent. But then over time, as we started seeing the benefits with cleaning the body, we then started choosing to do it ourselves because we saw the benefits in it. And now you probably bathe just about every day, I'd imagine, right? Well, there's this other part to this being who you are. You're not just this physical body. There's a mind here as well, that if you haven't learned the wisdom of how to clean that, how to purify that, then there's no wonder that you walk around with stress or anxiety or frustration or agitation or annoyance or any of these other feelings because you're not cleaning the mind. And the only reason why you're not doing that is because you've never learned the wisdom of how to do that. But even when you do learn how to do that, the mind is going to be complacent to a certain degree. That's what happened over here with cleaning the body. The same thing oftentimes happens with the mind. When you first start learning how to clean the mind can often be very complacent and not really be interested or motivated or enthused to be able to do that. So the Buddha here is just giving a little bit of wisdom to help you understand what's causing these unwholesome things happening in your day-to-day life, and then how to actually go about resolving it and addressing it. His core central teaching is the Eightfold Path, which you need to be able to learn. And by the time someone's got to book 12, they've more than learned that. But here, this is just a teaching where the Buddha is kind of honing in on some things that are actually causing the mind to experience these unwholesome results. So this first part here, he's just saying, what are unwholesome habits? They are unwholesome bodily actions, verbal actions, and evil, unwholesome livelihood. Okay, so when you're making unwise decisions through your bodily actions and your verbal actions or your livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life in the world. If you're causing harm to people, this harm is going to come back to you. This is the natural law of Gama, of cause and effect, or action and result. Some people call this karma. This is the Sanskrit version of this word. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language. So the Pali language uses the word Gama. This isn't anything mystical or magical. It's not about punishments and rewards. It's not about who's to blame or who's at fault. It's helping you to be able to see that there are certain decisions that you make either wisely or unwisely, and then those produce either wholesome or unwholesome results. That's what Gama is, the results of your decisions. So there's wholesome Gama or wholesome results that comes from your wise decisions. And then there's unwholesome results or unwholesome Gama that comes from your unwise decisions. And when you don't understand the natural law of Gama, you will go out into the world and make unwise decisions without even realizing it. And you'll experience unwholesome results. And what the mind typically does when you're experiencing unwholesome results is it'll blame it on other things. It'll say that you're experiencing good luck or bad luck, or people might think that you have destiny or fate, or they might blame it on God or some entity called the universe. Or they might say that it's other people that are causing you to experience these unwholesome results. But it's actually your own decisions that are leading to these unwholesome results. And you can see that clearly through the natural law of Gama. That when you make decisions wisely, you'll experience wholesome Gama. And when you make decisions unwisely, you'll experience unwholesome Gama. So part of what the Buddha is teaching you about training your mind is to uproot the pollutions that are motivating unskillful conduct. Because when you have unskillful conduct, you'll experience these unwholesome results. One of the ways that help you see this is think back to when you were a child once again, right? When we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. We fell down, we hit our head, we bumped our elbows, we broke our toys, and we cried and cried. We were so upset with this because we lived in a world that we didn't understand. We lacked wisdom of this natural law of gravity, and therefore we made unwise decisions, and it produced unwholesome results for us. We fell down, we hurt ourselves. But then slowly but surely, we gained wisdom of this natural law. We never believed in it. We saw the truth for ourselves, right? You can see it even today, that you can see there's the natural law of gravity, right? Nobody's believing in the natural law of gravity. We can see the truth for ourselves that it exists. And we cultivated wisdom about that natural law of gravity. And now we make wiser decisions because of that. And now we don't have the difficulties and struggles that we once had as a child. We can walk through the world peacefully. We tie our shoes a bit tighter. We look at the surface of the sidewalk. We stopped being so giddy and bouncing around like a kid all the time. And now we can climb ladders. We can ride bicycles. We can get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we understand the natural law of gravity. We might say that we're fully awake, or we've cultivated the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. Well, there's other natural laws that are affecting you, whether you're aware of those natural laws or not. Just like we weren't aware of the natural law of gravity, but it still affected us, the same thing is true. This natural law of Gama is affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. And when you make unwise decisions based in the pollutions of the mind, you'll make unwise decisions about your bodily actions, your verbal actions, and certain livelihood that you'll conduct. So the Buddha teaches you what is wise and unwise in terms of your bodily actions, your verbal actions, and your livelihood. But then he gives you the tools and the techniques of how to uproot the pollutions that are motivating the decisions that are leading to these unwise decisions around your bodily actions and your verbal actions. So for example, if someone is bitter and harsh and hostile through their intentions, their speech, and their actions, then this is causing harm in the world, and this is all going to come back to you. You're going to experience unwholesome results because of this. So these unwholesome bodily actions, verbal actions, and a livelihood is going to produce harm in the world, and now harm is going to come back to you. So you can train your mind to uproot these pollutions and get to the point where you're no longer making those unwise decisions. So the Buddha goes on here and he's helping you to be able to see the origin of these unwise decisions about your bodily, verbal conduct and what's actually producing it. And here he's explaining that the origin of this is in the mind, right? That oftentimes people think that when you're being bitter and harsh and hostile to your parents or your siblings or your friends, you think that they're causing you to do that. But but it's not. It's coming from your own mind. It's your mind choosing to be bitter and harsh and hostile. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that, because in order to transform your mind and transform your life, you need wisdom. Just like you needed wisdom about how to clean the body and take a shower, you need wisdom of how to clean the mind. But if you didn't understand that the real problem is within your mind, you wouldn't be able to address it. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to see that the origin of these unwholesome habits that you have is within one's own mind. And you can independently verify this, and you're not believing it. Then, what mind? Well, it's this mind that has something called craving, anger, and ignorance. This is referred to as the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots. Craving is the mind's longing, yearning, the selfish desires, the unquenchable thirst, where the mind is wanting things to be a certain way. And the mind can only experience happiness if it gets what it wants. So the mind will chase things like money, or a brand new boyfriend or girlfriend, or it'll chase a new job. And the mind's longing, yearning, and it can only be happy if it gets what it wants. But if you're not doing that, the mind will swing all the way to the other side, where it's dull or lethargic or lazy or complacent. But what the Buddha is teaching you to do is come to the middle, where you can make wise decisions to gradually pursue your goals, objectives, or interests and accomplish those things, but you don't form your feelings based on whether you accomplish that thing or not. But as long as there's craving in the mind, this longing, yearning, your mind won't be able to do that. Your mind will make decisions based in this craving, where you're chasing and chasing and chasing and chasing. And this is where the mind becomes stressed and have anxiety, and you can become exhausted at the end of your day because your mind's out there chasing all these things. And then when, again, the mind gets what it wants, it gets happy or excited. But when it doesn't get what it wants, this anger, this hatred, this ill will can arise. And this is where the mind becomes unskillful. And it firmly believes that the problem is external. So what the mind will do is it'll tend to push people away, or it'll push a situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. This is called aversion. You might have pushed away friends or family out of your life, thinking that that was going to solve your problem. But you can see when you push those people out of your life, it hasn't solved your problem, because you still get angry, you still get frustrated, you still get annoyed. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. That's part of that unwholesome bodily and verbal conduct, that an individual will be bitter and harsh and hostile, almost trying to fear somebody else into doing things your way. Or the mind might put its expectations on people and try to control people, or force them, pressure them into doing things your way. And people might be doing this to you too. So this craving that is in the mind, it's going to produce anger, because you're not going to get what you want every single time. So therefore the anger is going to be arising. And when it does, you can't live harmoniously with all people, because it's only a matter of time before somebody does something opposite of what your mind wants them to do. Because I'm sure you've been in arguments where you've been adamantly trying to convince someone that they have to stop doing what they're doing, or else you're going to continue to get angry. But you can't train 8 billion people in the world to do things your way. It's only you that actually does things a certain way. Nobody does things the same way as you in the world. So it's only a matter of time, because of impermanence, that you're going to encounter people that do things differently than you. And now when you experience somebody doing things differently than you, that's where that anger is arising, and the pushing away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting expectations on people comes in. And where all this is coming from is this third one, this ignorance, or unknowing of true reality. I only use the word ignorance because other people use it and help you guys to understand, if you've been learning with other people, what they're teaching. A better way to think of this is the unknowing of true reality, or confusion or misunderstanding, that the mind just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand in the unenlightened state. It lacks wisdom. The mind, as I mentioned a few times, it firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. It doesn't have the wisdom to understand craving and anger and how detrimental this is to your well-being within your own mind. So that's why on the path to enlightenment, your ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom, because that's what's going to transform the ignorance. That's what's going to take you out of that state where the mind's continuing to have this lack of wisdom. So while we call these the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires, and it's craving, anger, and ignorance, It's really because of ignorance or the unknowing of true reality that the mind continues to crave and it continues to have anger. If it wasn't for this ignorance, craving and anger wouldn't exist. So the ultimate goal in this path is to cultivate wisdom. And that's what's going to actually lead to you eliminating your craving and eliminating your anger. So it's this craving, anger, and ignorance that is causing the mind to now produce unwise decisions about your bodily conduct, your verbal conduct, and then a certain livelihood in the way someone might choose to sustain their life in the world. And now, if you transform that, you can actually get rid of it. So the Buddha is explaining that the way you eliminate these unwholesome habits where they cease without remainder is you eliminate and abandon the bodily misconduct, the verbal misconduct, the mental misconduct, and this wrong livelihood. And there's other teachings that the Buddha shares that helps you to be able to understand how to do that. That's what an individual understands in the foundational teachings. And then what he's saying here at the end is he's saying that you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate the unwholesome qualities and then arise the wholesome qualities. You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and then instantly your mind is going to experience some kind of beneficial result. This is another way of wording right effort for those of you guys that have studied that. What the Buddha is saying is you need to awaken enthusiasm for the non-arising of unarisen, evil, unwholesome mental states. So when you're noticing an unwholesome mental state that has not arised in the mind, you're going to need to prevent that. So for example, right now, you're probably not thinking about killing another human being. This is like the farthest thing from your mind right now. And what the Buddha is saying is any kind of unwholesome mental state that's not currently in your mind, you're going to need to prevent that from ever coming into the mind. And you're going to need to apply the effort with enthusiasm. And you're going to need to arise this energy, exert your mind, and strive to prevent unwholesome things from coming into your mind. But then the second part of this is he's saying, arise enthusiasm for abandoning arisen evil, unwholesome states, because there's certain unwholesome states that are actually in your mind. You know, maybe somebody has anger or frustration, or maybe someone has a craving for having sex outside of their current relationship. Maybe they're in a relationship with someone, but they have a craving for sex outside of that relationship. They're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate that unwholesome aspect of the mind, because it's going to produce unwholesome results in their life if they choose to act upon those things. Then the third part, he's saying arising the enthusiasm for the unarisen wholesome states. There's certain wholesome states that you're going to need to bring into your mind that are not currently in your mind right now. Like an example of this might be generosity. The Buddha teaches generosity, giving and sharing with others without any expectation of anything in return. Sharing things like your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. Because the mind with craving, desire, attachment can oftentimes be very selfish, where it holds on to things very tightly. And you're going to need to learn how to live open-handedly and be joyful in giving and sharing with other people. This is going to help your mind to learn to let go. It's not just the meditation that's training your mind to let go. It's also the generosity, training your mind to let go. So if you know that your mind doesn't typically have this generosity, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into your mind. That's a wholesome quality that you're going to need to cultivate. And there's other wholesome qualities as well. It's not just generosity. But then this last part, he says that you're going to need to arise enthusiasm for the continuation, the non-disappearance, the strengthening, the increase, the fulfillment by development, the wholesome qualities, because you currently have wholesome qualities in your mind. There's probably certain wholesome qualities that you have, but they haven't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. For example, there's a quality called loving kindness. Loving kindness is the genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, where you have active goodwill towards others without judgment. You probably have a certain amount of loving kindness in your mind, where you have care and concern for others, where you have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. But it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development, because in some cases, you get angry and bitter and harsh with people. This is your ill will coming out towards that person. And now the mind, noticing this, that in some cases you have loving kindness and in some cases you don't, in order to practice these teachings and actually get to enlightenment, you're going to need to apply the effort and enthusiasm to arise this loving kindness, where you can be loving and kind with every single being that you interact with. That Harshness and bitterness and hostility, as I've mentioned, is coming from one's own mind. You can get to the point where you have love and kindness for every single being that you come in contact with, but you'll find that hard to do when you don't understand how to do it and you haven't learned how to clean the mind. But you've only learned how to clean the body. So the Buddha is teaching you how to clean the mind. In this last part, he's talking about in order to get rid of this unwholesome bodily conduct and this verbal conduct, you're going to need to apply the effort to do that, to get rid of the unwholesome qualities in your mind and arise the wholesome qualities. And the path to enlightenment is teaching you what are those unwholesome qualities and what are those wholesome qualities, so that you know how to get rid of those, eliminate the unwholesome, and arise and support the wholesome. So this is just a teaching that's helping you understand a certain aspect of the path, but there's other aspects of the path that you would need to know in order to really fully implement this. So do you guys have any questions on this one? No questions here? Okay. Don't see any questions online either. All right. So let me see what we've got for the next one. All right. Let's read this one and we'll make this our last chapter. Would somebody like to read this one? Yes. It's good that wall was there.
Words which should be studied, learned, and investigated in the foremost assembly. And what is the assembly trained in investigation, not in conceited talk? Here, in this kind of assembly, when those discourses are being recited that are mere poetry composed by poets, beautiful in words and phrases, created by outsiders, spoken by their disciples, the monks are not interested to listen to them, do not lend an ear to them, or apply their minds to understand them. They do not think those teachings should be studied and learned. But when those discourses spoken by the Tathagata are being recited that are deep, deep in meaning, world transcending, connected with emptiness, the monks are interested to listen to them, lend an ear to them, and apply their minds to understand them. They think those teachings should be studied and learned. And having learned those teachings, they question each other about them and investigate them thoroughly, asking, how is this? What is the meaning of this? They disclose to others what is obscure and clarify what is unclear, and dispel the confusion about numerous misunderstandings. This is called the assembly trained in investigation, not in conceited talk. And what is the assembly trained in conceited talk, not in investigation? Here in this kind of assembly, when those discourses are being spoken by the Tathagata, are being recited that are deep, deep in meaning, world transcending, connected with emptiness, the monks are not interested to listen to them, do not lend an ear to them, or apply their minds to understand them. They do not think those teachings should be studied and learned. But when those discourses are being recited that are mere poetry, composed by poets, beautiful in words and phrases, created by outsiders, spoken by their disciples, they are interested to learn, to listen to them, lend an ear to them, and apply their minds to understand them. They think those teachings should be studied and learned. And having learned those teachings, they do not question each other about them or investigate them thoroughly, asking, how is this? What is the meaning of this? They do not disclose to others what is obscure and clarify what is unclear, or dispel their confusion about numerous misunderstandings. This is called the assembly trained in conceited talk, not in investigation. These monks are the two kinds of assemblies. Of these two kinds of assemblies, the assembly trained in investigation, not in conceited talk, is foremost.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So the Buddha's teachings, as I mentioned, are all about investigation. You would like to investigate and examine his teachings. There's no belief in his teachings whatsoever. Every single aspect of his teachings you can independently verify. You might not know how to do that, and that's where a teacher helps you and guides you of how to independently verify his teachings. And he's sharing with you here that there's this assembly or this community of people that are trained in investigation, not in conceited talk. Conceited talk is like arrogance and pride and measuring and comparing and judging other people of what you think they should or shouldn't be doing. So the Buddha is explaining that his assembly is not trained in this conceited talk. It's trained in investigation. That when he speaks, his teachings are deep in meaning and people question them and examine them and try to understand them deeply. That his teachings aren't based in poetry with these beautiful words and phrases and things like this, right? But then there's these other assemblies or these other communities where there is conceited talk and they're not investigating the teachings, that they're based in this beautiful words and phrases and just mere poetry. But that doesn't lead to enlightenment. So you need to be able to understand teachings because the Buddha is describing the natural laws. And by you investigating the teachings, you can awaken to the wisdom of what those natural laws are. The reason why the mind's experiencing that stress and anxiety and all those other discontent feelings is because it lacks wisdom. It doesn't understand the world that it lives in. It's a real struggle and very difficult to live in a world that you don't understand. That's why we had those problems with the natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely we gained that wisdom through investigation and examination of the natural law of gravity. And now we make those wiser decisions. So the Buddha is guiding his students and guiding you now after his death to be able to investigate and examine the teachings. Don't just sit there and listen to mere poetry because it's easy on the ears. But if you're truly interested in getting to enlightenment and healing from what's hurting you so that you never need to experience these painful feelings ever again, you're going to need to investigate and examine teachings and cultivate wisdom about how your mind's working and about the world around you. One of the ways to think about the teachings of the Buddha is he took human psychology and he boiled it down to a very common language that any common person could understand. But you need to be able to apply effort and energy, investigation and examination to be able to understand those teachings through learning, reflecting, and practicing. And that's what he's teaching his students, that it would be wise to be a part of this assembly that is trained in investigation, because that's what he's saying. Out of these two kinds of assemblies, the one that is trained in investigation and not conceited talk, and one that is trained in conceited talk and not investigation, the foremost or the best, the most ideal community for you to be a part of is the one that's deeply investigating the teachings, that isn't trained in conceited talk, that the words aren't just mere poetry. Because when people are hearing the teachings of the Buddha, it's a lot of work sometimes. It's a challenge to be able to understand it. People aren't necessarily patient enough to sit and listen and understand and deeply investigate the teachings, right? The last thing the unenlightened mind is interested in hearing is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, right? People don't typically want to hear that. They want to believe that it's other people who are causing you to experience this anger and sadness and frustration. This allows the ego to stay intact, that I'm perfect. It's everybody else that's causing all these difficulties in my life. But when you break through that and you get to the point where you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings and you're willing to investigate teachings, not just hear mere poetry, now you can actually roll up the sleeves, you can sink your teeth in, and you can truly understand what you need in order to be able to move the mind to this enlightened mental state through understanding the training. So that's what the Buddha is encouraging you to do, is be part of a community that is trained in investigation, not in conceited talk, where you hear just mere poetry. But the challenge for you is that that's a more challenge for the mind to be able to learn and understand and investigate in those situations, rather than just sit back and hear this mere poetry, that you're going to need to actually hear teachings that you're going to need to wrap your mind around. And this takes more effort and energy in order to be able to do that. But then that's what's going to make your life so much easier, because your mind will be awakened to this wisdom that you need in order to be able to navigate the world peacefully and joyfully. So do you guys have any questions on this chapter here where the Buddha is talking about these two types of assemblies? Questions? Yeah.
Thank you. What does connected with empty mean?
What it means is that his teachings, it's helping you to get to a point where you've emptied your mind, where your mind in the unenlightened state, you're going to have pollution. So it's going to be filled up with this conditioning, right? Where your mind's filled up with all this pollution. But by the time you train your mind, it helps you to purify the mind and empty it out, where now you get to the point where the mind is unconditioned. So the teachings are connected with emptiness, leading you to empty out your mind of the pollutions that are causing these discontent feelings. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha. If you guys would like to learn more, if you'd like to get more involved in understanding the path to enlightenment, like I mentioned, there's classes on Sundays and Wednesdays that are really helpful for that. And we even have courses and retreats that would be very helpful for you, where we teach Monday through Friday and things like this. So you're welcome to see all of these on our bulletin board over there. You can also find it on our website. If you go to our website, you'll see our events calendar. You'll be able to see all the options for you to learn here at the temple and also online as well. And you're also welcome to come talk with me, and I can help you get plugged into the resources that you need. I do recommend that you start with the first book. That's the best place to get started, and then gradually be learning in the courses and classes and retreats. So what we have coming up is tomorrow on Sunday at 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. We have the group learning program here. At 6:30 p.m. over at the main hall, we have a meditation session where you can come for meditation and then just ask any questions that you like. So if you're coming for the walking market, the shopping market that takes over most of the city, or if you'd like to come, you're welcome to come at 6:30 to the main hall here, because the market is right out in front of the temple and takes over a lot of the city. So oftentimes people like to stop by for meditation. You're more than welcome to do that tomorrow at 6:30. And then on Wednesday, we have meditation here, and I'll have a session then. And then on Fridays, we have a temple fun night where we come together and either play games or watch movies and things like this. So you guys are welcome to any and all of these events, which again, you can find on our bulletin board or on our website. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps we'll see you next time. Sawadee khap. Sawadee khap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.